Well, hello, and how have you been? It's been a while. This is Fatmarrow. I'm tired, I'm busy, I've got other stuff I should be doing, so it's time to make a video. Um, just mostly going to be talking about a new sideways scroller project I've been doing for fun. Before that, just a quick look at my Antibes map. I think I showed you this a little while back. I've been busy at work making what looks like not a huge amount of difference. But I put in a lot more roofs, so it looks more like how it's supposed to. Bear in mind this is a work in progress, nothing is really dirtied up, there's a lot of square edges, bad texture work, but I have tweaked a few things. So I've got a new coastline, and this is something from the marketplace. This is Modular cliffs, which does fit together quite nicely. I have deliberately embuggered the textures I've degraded them by at least a factor of 2. I've turned them down a bit from maximum resolution because it was 4K textures and I don't need that kind of space taken up. And it comes with these bits of foliage. So if I may not even get on to the sideways scroller because there's a lot I could say about this, not necessarily informative or correct, but I'm going to say it anyway. This foliage seems to work better than the speed tree stuff, and it tends to look better. So this is built with static lighting, bit of wobble in the breeze. I turn that right down. I think it's a little bit distracting. So one other thing, just to digress, this water plane stuff, it's a bit funny, it's a bit hokey around the sides, and as you turn, that sort of dark area turns with you. That's not ideal, and I was wondering what made that look like that in particular. And it's basically a screen space reflection, which is a very quick way to get accurate shadows. This can get you things like reflections of characters, so you could see yourself in a mirror using this technique, which is something you can't say for much of Unreal. And basically what it's using the stuff it's rendered on the screen to literally then pop it on the reflection. And so these bits are black because you're missing that bit of the screen where you'd see that reflection. So anyway, here's a sort of new bit I think from where you've seen before. And if we pop down here, we're going to go to, I think, one of the attacker starts, which is still a work in progress. Still, it's actually quite a difficult start because it's all uphill fighting through bits of lots of places for defenders to hide, but hopefully they won't be hiding near here. But here is a still bit of water, and you can see the screen space reflections. So as I move up, there's more stuff rendered for it to reflect there. As I go down, the reflection disappears because there's nothing pre-rendered for it to reflect. But when you come at it sort of like that, you know, it's bar the black bits, it's quite a nice reflection. Yeah, and while I'm here, basically where I'm at the edge of the map, I'm slightly knocking out buildings without great care or attention, so this bit is kind of off the map and I'm not bothering to do too much of a bang up job on here. The road down here doesn't quite work, that's not a real road, but it's off the map. And did I? Oh, wonder what that is. It only has to work from a distance, and there are some sort of set pieces where I'm trying to put a bit more effort in down there, for example. And this is again all based on a real place. It's not quite like the real place. There's a load of foliage that's going to go in there ideally, and to do that I need to get more efficient foliage, which I'll come back to. But yeah, I'm just kind of throwing out stuff. These things here are road signs which use a single atlas texture, I guess you'd say. I'm just trying to find it. If I bring this across here, you can see there's the texture. So I just have something in Photoshop. I just get a photo reference with the road sign, cut it out, do a perspective correction, and then stick it in here at quite a low resolution. Let's see if I can find that. Why can't I find that? Okay, there we go. So this is 1024 by 1024, and some of this stuff is really quite low resolution, and some of it's needlessly high resolution. Let's get rid of that. No. Now, there's a lot of road signs all stuck around, and that can result in a lot of draw calls, though with the Atlas texture that means there's only one draw call per sign, and what I'm going to do eventually, I think, is to merge all the meshes. So I'm going to select all the road signs and merge them into a single mesh that spans the whole map. So it's going to be drawing that mesh most of the time, because most of the time one of these is going to be in shot. However, you've got a single material for the whole lot. You're not drawing the same mesh each time. It's not like a traffic cone that's repeating, which means you can make it an instanced mesh. An instance mesh isn't going to work for these because they're all different. They all have different texture mappings. Horrible, but anyway. So I think that's going to give me quite an optimized result for that. I mean, they're very low poly anyway. It's a rounded rectangle, more or less. So I'm now getting a bit more savvy with my optimization, and when this runs even slower than it does, I've got a few things I can do to speed it up. Foliage I was going to pay some attention to, and I've started doing more grown-up things like using the different views to see how things are displaying. So I'm going to quickly show you one thing, if I can remember where it is. I can't remember where it is. Shader complexity, there we go. One quads, don't know what that does. So this shows you where it's doing a lot of work with masked and translucent textures. Green is good, white is extremely bad. Now, I have had some opinions about speed trees before. They don't seem to be terribly efficient, and that is because they have a lot of big cards, sort of sheets, which have the foliage in them. There's a lot of transparent bits in them, which leads to overdraw, which means literally just drawing lots of different things on the same spot. Now over here we've got some of the trees. Again, the overdraw's not brilliant, but then I go down to this new foliage which came with the cliffs, and it's a lot better optimized. Doesn't go even pink. So this, it's pretty good. It's not especially high poly, so you can see with the different sources of the foliage that some work a lot better than others. So I'm thinking I'm going to have to either get foliage from somewhere else or do my own foliage, because hand-drawn foliage is just much more optimized. And the key to getting it, I mean, you can sort of see the edges of the cards here. There's a lot of blank space, and what you want to do is trade off more polys to cut round the bits that aren't transparent, so you have more polys to draw, but it will reduce the overdraw considerably, and that gives you more of a win. You can have a lot more polys if you have a little less overdraw, is how I understand it. And you see this car's got transparent windows, and if you look through the car there's going to be more overdraw than without. So that's one thing, just to get it optimized. I know I'm going to have to go to the foliage and improve that before I start filling in big areas like that, which in the real life place are just swamped with foliage. And I was reminded of something else, which is the reflection captures. So to make stuff look nice with the specularity, which is kind of the stuff that's reflected in materials, I've sort of found a sphere reflection capture, just dunked it in, changed the radius to something appropriate and made sure they overlapped, but I never really paid much attention to that. And if somewhere's not in the radius of a reflection capture sphere or a box, it looks bad, but it's easy to sort of overlook that. The box captures I've used for rooms inside buildings, especially if there's a room with different coloured paint. You really want to have a box per room, otherwise it looks horrible. But there's another, just while we're here, there's another visualization, if I can find it. I should have looked this up. It's basically the reflection, and I'm probably looking at it and not seeing it. Reflections, there we go. So this is where you turn your level into aluminium or aluminum, if you want to be wrong, covered things. So this is after I've optimised and put in all the reflections. Things that look shiny and foil-like is good because that's the reflections that you'd see. This bit's getting a bit dodge, so this bit does not have great coverage. Well, that bit does, and you can see more clearly and easily the impact of where you actually place these things. And I didn't realise the effect was as pronounced as that. But there we go. So those are two useful visualizations which I think help. I spent longer than I wanted to on this. So I've done a few bits of work trying to define the edges of my map. This is a bit of a cop-out. At least it's French. There's a bit there. So I'm just trying to make sure that there's a good flow with at least 2 routes to everywhere. I'd ideally like more routes going to the spawn point, which I've chosen just because it's, you know, it's the edge of the map, and the map is basically fairly linear. There's 3 main routes. There's a route down the main road, which is generally open with bits of cover going down to there. There is a coastal path which goes down by the coast, says the master of the obvious, and then there's a path going down the middle. At least one path going down the middle, and it gets a bit more complicated at the end, and I haven't quite decided how I'm going to put a boundary in there. In terms of insertions, and I'm not trying to be rude, though I have no aversion to being rude, in terms of your special forces insertions, which is how I talk to my other half at bedtime, there's a beach there in real life. It'd be nice to sort of have the beach area coming into the town, because that's basically a nice option with a boat to come in there or something. However, there is a harbour the other side, as you can see with my nice little, yeah, whatever that is. And I don't want to actually have to make lots of boats, because A, I can't do that very well, and B, it's going to suck on the sort of processing power. One problem I haven't yet resolved is the transparency of these things. What I found is that, and this is with me tweaking it, that when you have a masked texture like that, which I could have done a LOD with that actually meshes, but I couldn't be bothered in the end. Looks alright from that far, so that'll do. When you go further away from textures, as they get mipped down, they tend to either go like that, totally opaque, which looks horrible, or in some other cases, if the texture's less dense, they tend to go completely transparent. This is neither realistic nor helpful. In either case, I haven't got a fix for that. I've tweaked the sharpness. You know, you can turn the bitmaps off, but then you just get a horrible moire pattern coming out. Don't know the solution to that. If you know the solution to making that be uniformly opaque, even at further distances, let me know, because that looks horrible. I mean, this is a low resolution version in the editor, but yeah. A few other little things, some decals, don't know. Just for the writing, it's a small thing, but it really gives it more of a, sorry about the light map, I haven't tweaked that one yet. It helps bring it to life a bit. These window textures are really low res and nasty. I've just basically got a bit of another material around it, but from a little distance you're mostly seeing the reflection, and it looks higher res because it's the reflection. So actually a bit of reflection can hide the horribleness of your textures unless you're really looking at them. I just want it to look okay out of the corner of your eye, which it pretty much does. It's hard to fully visualize the areas because I've only done one half of the street, but once the other half is put in, hopefully it'll be nice and immersive. Now these lamps, I was talking about the street signs, these lamps will be instance meshes, I think, because they're all the same and they're not super high poly, so those ones I will just select them all, make them instance meshes. That's much easier to manage with this tool or similar, because you can more easily tweak things once you've done that, whereas if you make a single mesh, you made a single mesh and you have to remake it and hide the things that formed it and that sort of stuff. But yeah, So maybe this is a brief talk on stuff I've learned with doing some more on my Antibes level. These railings I had put on a spline curve, but I've now started putting them in as individual meshes, because then I can make them instance meshes again, whereas things on a spline, they're all different because they're all deformed in different ways. You can make them into a single mesh. That's something I can do. So all these bits of paint are just meshes. That's something else I was going to say. Meshes fitted to a spline. That's the only way realistically to do these, to get that nice curve in there. And those I will convert to a single mesh, so there's a single draw call for quite a long length of line, and it's very low poly. One problem I've got is that I've had to make them have a bit of a depth to cope with bumpy road surfaces where you can't quite match the mesh to the road surface. I've made them quite small light maps because I don't want to take up megabytes with road paint, which means that you've got black bits where the resolution of the light map isn't sufficient to, that's less than a pixel on the light map, so it's going to smush in with the rest of it. But that's the way I've gone with these things. I've got some road paint sort of materials going on. The yellow doesn't quite work, but it's nice to give you a bit of that 3D effect, and that is how road markings are. They are a bit embossed, offset by the fact the light maps are horrible. I've made some custom meshes for these things. So my road paint is currently done with meshes rather than with textures or with decals, with one exception so far. The pedestrian crossing is a decal, and what I've done with that is I've made a few, if I can find it, where's it gone? Where is it hiding? There it is. So I've made a few special master decal materials which do things like, here we are, no, if I find an example, that's the master, that's in fact let's find, right, oh, delete, that sounds promising. Well, before I delete it, okay, let's find another one. Right, bear with me a second. Another work in progress, but also while I'm here, I need a better texture for that, but I'm trying to get a bit more variation, and I need to retexture these in cylindrical ways. This is a decal, and that is a bit of texture, because decals work quite well with sort of white, bright colours. When they're darker and embossed and shadowed, that would look terrible with decal. That's just how they're done at the moment. Even with roughness and normals, they come out looking, yeah. And that is actually a texture that I've tried to colour blend, and you see it's not perfect, but it's hard to spot that out of the corner of your eye. But that with a normal map gives you a much better effect there. So I'm trying to make this area quite a sort of well developed area, so that different bits of the map, there are things that stand out as the thing that define that bit of the map, and this is going to be les associations, or the towers. That's going to be how people will in their mind think of this bit of the map. I mean, that's how it is in real life too, but I'm trying to really focus the attention on the distinctive bits of each area. Very long road. I'm trying to put in, again, these exist in real life, but they're quite nice. It's a little thing to crouch behind. I don't want to have complete lines of sight going all the way off, because snipers can dominate, so I'm putting in cars and vehicles, and again, well, these are bins which look plausible in the market, but they're not there in real life on non-market days. Quite a few tables and chairs, but I don't want to go overboard on that. There will be more stuff in here. I want more cover there to make this more of an area you can move down. At the same time, it is a more exposed route than other ones, though everything's a bit linear, so sniping is going to be a slight problem, so I'm going to try and put as many bits of obstacles in I can, perhaps less realistic once I've got the main geometry down. So that area breaks things up a bit, but once you go down here, it's a very long sight line. There are doors you can go into, I'm trying to make some of the doorways a bit bigger to give them more cover. I want to have more vegetation, which again is there in the real life. I mean, lots of soft cover I quite like. It makes it you know, high risk, but you can sneak up with lots of that. Lost train of thought again, but there we go. So it's a lot of work still to be done, but it's beginning to come together, and I'm beginning to define the boundaries of the map so that there are areas where there are going to be no bits where you can see you know, the unfinished bits hanging off the side. So this is now bar a bit of dirt. So I did a little bit of, you know, dirting up there to make it look a bit more realistic. The floor is always a bit clean and that's not very realistic. I'm going to have to think of something to do with these floors. I've done a bit of, you know, stuff there. I've tried to use the landscape a bit to make a bit of variation. I need to do a bit more of that. But those cliffs, they look very nice. I recommend them. They really made it look a bit better now. So I'm sure you do a better job than I did, but it's a lot more of a real feel, and this area still needs to be done. I need to have a lot of little rocks there. I don't know how the performance is going to go. Yeah, so that's on Antibes map. I think I've gone on for far longer than I wanted to, so I might just end there, but there's a few considerations when you're building a map like that, and I think I'll then go and talk about my sideways scroller I'm doing for fun. Okay, bye bye.